Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our special meeting tonight for the Herriman City Fire Safety Area. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Just by way of announcement, Councilmember Shields is attending. He is online. He is on a work trip, but he is here. Steve, Harris, can you just confirm that you're with us?
I can hear you. I'm not sure if you can hear me, though.
Yep, we've got you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Okay, we just have one item tonight, a public hearing and consideration of a resolution to establish the property tax rate and approve the fiscal year 2022-2024 budget for the Herriman City Fire Service Area. We're going to have a presentation first by our staff. Alan, are you taking that?
We're going to do a fairly simple presentation, but this is a continuation of what we started last year as we left the Unified Fire Service Area. As you know, for several years, our residents have paid taxes to the Unified Fire Service Area. And a year ago, we withdrew from that process, and we have the tax at the city right now. And I just want to show a little bit about what's really happening with this, and that our residents actually are not going to see a property tax increase because of what the city's doing. There are other entities that tax our residents that have increased this year, but what's happening with Herriman City does not raise any taxes at all. It just changes it from being paid to the city to being paid to a service district that will keep that money specifically for fire services. So just to show here, back into 2020, our residents paid the city of Herriman 0.0028 in property taxes. They also paid Unified Fire Service Area 0.001717. Okay, in the fall of 2020, Unified Fire Service Area provided information to us that said that we were paying about $1 million a year. Our residents were paying that much more taxes than they were getting in services. And so at that time, the city decided to withdraw from the Unified Fire Service Area. We still get our service from Unified Fire, which is a different entity. The Unified Fire Service Area allowed us to withdraw from their district. So last year, the city of Herriman collected 0.001997. Unified Fire didn't collect anything in Herriman Service Area, did not collect anything. So last year, what the city collected was the equal to what the city and the fire district had collected previously. What's proposed for this year, the Herriman City rate actually goes down to 0.000194. So it's about 25% lower rate than it was 2 years ago. Unified Fire Service will get nothing. Herriman City Fire Service Area will get 0.001320, making a total tax rate from these two entities at 0.001514. Now, the reason people got notices that the tax was going up is because the state only notices you for increases. They're not showing the decrease the city is taking to make this increase. If anyone gets a chance to see the Skittles video, that's actually a better explanation than what I can get, but it's a very good illustration. It tells it very well what's happening. But we are simply moving this to a fire district that will hold those funds specifically for fire services. Most cities have all the property taxes come into one pot, and then they fund police and fire and everything else out of that. Herriman City has chosen to have special service districts for police and fire, so that money is restricted to be used for those areas. You'll see from this slide here back in 2020, and you know that a lot of entities tax you besides the city. You got the school district, you got the water conservancy districts, you got the sewer district, the mosquito abatement, and libraries and so forth. You'll see from this that in 2020, our residents were paying 0.014199. This year, the rate will be 0.011749. Now, part of that reduction is because of the increase in appraised value. As appraised value comes up, the rates come down. There are actually 3 entities on this graph that are going up this year, even though it appears they're going down. The school district, the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy, and the Central Utah Water Conservancy are going up. The rest of the entities are staying consistent with what they've had in prior years. The only difference is that we're changing between, we're removing 0.00132 from the city and putting it into the fire district. It's an even amount. It's not changing your taxes. It will actually, depending on the value of your house, if your house went up faster than others, you might pay a little more, but in general, on average, you should pay the same. So that's my question, or my short presentation. Does anyone have a question or comment?
Alan, will you explain the equalization and how the revenue to the city does
Okay.
not change?
The way the taxes are created in Utah, we get the same tax amount every year unless we come and do a tax increase. And so, you know, we get roughly $1 million a year from property taxes in the city. And so if your house appraises for 10% more this year, your rate that you will pay will go down by 10%. It equalizes it so city governments and counties and states can get a uniform amount. It doesn't go up when the rate goes up. It doesn't go down when your appraisal goes down. It stays consistent with that. The only increase we get without a truth in taxation hearing is for the new growth. If we get new homes, we get additional amount. Like I say, this one has to have a truth in taxation because we're adding to one, but we're taking away from another, leaving a net zero change to our residents.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from council? No. Okay, appreciate it, Alan. Okay, we will go ahead and open this for public comment at this time. And I will say too, I think, can we have staff also answer any questions after if needed? If there's,
Yeah, certainly.
for, just so we've got some boards up here that kind of explain this. But I think the key is that, as Alan was saying, the revenue to the city does not change this year from those 3 entities. It does not change. There's no increase to our budgets at all this year with these changes. We're not, I mean, I've had some people think we're hiding. We're not, there's no hiding anything. It's just, values did go up this year, and I think we're all struggling with our assessed values out here went crazy high, and that's making it look really bad. But that, again, that doesn't, a lot of people have the misconception that we, as a city, when values go up, we get more money, and that's not, state law doesn't, state code does not allow that to happen. That's what this equalization is this, a city in general, our revenue does not go up as assessed values go up. So that's, it's complicated. Our property tax system isn't just a certain percentage as like sales tax. It's different, but.
I'll do my best to kind of summarize that and tell me if I'm wrong, Alan. When it comes to property tax in general, as Teddy and I were just having a little sidebar on, pick any of those entities, when it comes to property tax, they get the same amount of money each year unless they do a truth in taxation to actually increase the rate of tax. When you get your valuation from the county assessor every year and they say this is the value of your property, they measure that against everyone else's. So if the value of your property went up faster in comparison to someone else's, then your amount of that total that, say, the city or the school district gets might adjust a little bit. That make some sense. The actual tax rate hasn't changed. The total amount that the school district gets or the city gets is the same. The amount that you individually pay might change a little bit because your home value went up higher, went higher faster than your neighbors. They do an equalization that way, but it's not a tax increase. When they do a truth and taxation hearing, it's required by the state anytime there is an increase in any tax rate. So the reason we're having this hearing tonight is we have a new entity, the Herriman City Fire area, that's going to be collecting taxes that it wasn't before. So technically that's a new tax and we're required to hold this hearing. It's not an increase. We're moving that tax from Unified Fire Service Area where we were paying into a bucket of money along with several other cities. And then we had very little say in what happened to that money. We separated from that bucket and created our own, right? So that money stays in Herriman and we decide what happens with that money in Herriman. We're still contracting with UFA to provide that service, but if there's any extra left over, we keep it instead of that group of other cities keeping it. In doing that, we didn't meet the deadline to create our separate fire service area last year, so we had to have the city collect that tax. This year, we're moving that tax from the city specifically to fire. The rate is not changing at all.
The amount, yeah, the amount, yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I just think it's important for residents to know, too, the reason we do that is simply what Alan said, to keep them separate. We, the council, decided that the city tax should go to the city. If it's specifically for the police department, there should be a separate taxing entity so that money never commingles or gets confused or anything. That goes to the police department, that goes to the fire, and this goes for the Herriman City property taxes. So this is just simply the confusing step because we tried to do it last year. We didn't have enough time. But this is just simply pulling it back out of the city and putting it in the fire bucket where we want it to be, rather than being commingled with the Herriman City property tax.
As Alan mentioned, we've chosen to do that specifically for that reason, so the residents still see exactly what they're paying for police, exactly what they're paying for fire, rather than it going into a general city bucket, and we decide to use that money for whatever.
More transparency, yep. Okay, with that being said, we still welcome comments. We don't want to shut down. We're not trying to explain away any comments, so please still ask questions, make comments. So at this time, we'll open the public comment. You do have 2 minutes to make a comment. And then again, like I said, if we need to ask more questions after, we can discuss further after. But at this time, we will open the public comment. If you'll just state your name, Steve.
Okay, my name is Steve Schlesinger. I am a Herriman City resident. I live up off of above Butterfield Park. Not so much of a question because Lauren, you and I talked about this, but a couple years ago when I was attending some of these meetings before everything fell apart, they talked about upgrading the fire hall, the fire station. So the question I have is, what is this money, how much is, how is this money being used towards upgrading that fire station?
You're talking about the one on Main Street?
Excuse me?
The 103 on Main Street?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll address that after, Steve. You bet.
Okay.
We'll answer it right now. Yep.
The second comment I have goes to what you were just talking about with the millage rate. I think the biggest problem is, and Lauren and I have talked about this internally as well, people are seeing this huge increase, okay? And I understand where it's coming from, but if you can take not so much the millage rate, but you can show how that millage rate applies to the dollars from last year's assessed value to this year's assessed value, because I think my assessed value went up like 50 or 60%. So, fortunately, it wasn't that big of a change in the Herriman City, taxes. But I think if you get away from the millage and show, basically the value times the millage shows, what it was in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, I think people would have a better understanding of how that money's being set aside and what it's being used for.
Perfect. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Well, Alan's going to answer right now.
Just to explain on the old city hall, our fire station, when we separated from the district, we separated January 1st. we did not get any money from that property taxes till November. So the city had to front about $4 million for this change, which is coming back with the property tax at this point. By this time next year, that $4 million will be paid back to the city that we fronted on this deal. Then there will be money that's set aside out of this for rebuilding that station at another location. But this was not something that we could go in without some money up front. And we had to cover 11 months of fire service prior to collecting any taxes. And we're paying roughly $1.3 million a quarter. Every 3 months, we're paying $1.3 million for for fire service. So, you know, going into that first year, we had to pay that out of our other resources. And so as that gets repaid, and it should be repaid early next year, we will then be able to start going down the path of building the new station, replacing the one that needs to be fixed.
Thank you, Alan. And so, Stephen, in addition, so that's where that extra money is now set aside for. We can control where we spend that money, on our stations, on our apparatus, but it stays here in Herriman for benefit of our residents, so. Okay, any other comments at this time?
This directly affects your, the city taxes in this area that I'm going to talk about. Herriman has grown exponentially, and it.
Can you say your name too? Can you
Kent
state-
Robertson,
Kent
Timeless Court.
Okay.
As the city continues to progress and grow, are we looking at future stations because response times and responses number of calls is going to continue to increase as older residents and, you know, stuff starts to change? You actually need 3 stations now. So we are behind the power curve. Station 103 is not your only concern. So future stations, I mean, I'm looking at Draper, they're talking about 2 more stations with the prison being moved out. So you need to really consider that. And Anthony knows my history, and we actually had a company donate property for one of our stations. Is that something that during the development stages of our future and our planning that we're looking at, that having a developer come in and say, look, we want you here, but can you help us out and donate property for a fire station? Because those are things that the city definitely needs to look at to help us cut back on the price of doing business. So I'm not sure if that's something we're looking at, but you definitely should consider it.
Yes, it is.
Yes, yeah.
Darrell Robinson, I live on 6400 West, up next to the mountain, south of the rodeo grounds. And I just want to thank our fire department. We live in a city that has some unique fire challenges, I think. And, you know, I feel very safe with the people who are protecting us. And to live right on the hill where there's a lot of danger, I just know that I hear the trucks come the moment something happens, and I just really appreciate the job that they do, and I support the city, and I'm really grateful to be a Herriman resident, so thank you.
Thank you, Darrell.
Kyle Hamilton. I lived on 6500 West and 134 South. And just, my question is mainly from this proposed increased letter. It says that our taxes will be increased, but is that increase going to be on top of what we've already been increased, or is that part of or is it already in part of the tax assessment that has come out from the county?
That's
As far as the letter you received regarding the Herriman City Fire area, that is an increase because it's a new entity. It's not a new tax, it's not extra tax. We're decreasing that by an equal amount from the city tax.
Okay, so we're not, I mean, my taxes basically went up $1,000 on my tax assessment, and then I get this. It looks to me like it's going to go up another $250. The way I read these together, is that the case? Or?
No, that's included. That's all included in that. And I would say, and that's where the assessed value is, it's been hard on our residents out here. That assessed value this year was extremely high. I think it was a big jump for all of us out here. That comes from the county level. We could get into more about how that's assessed, how our values are assessed, but
And then
But I think the messaging on that is they're not going to inform you that we decrease the same $250 some from your tax bill from Herriman City, and we have a new entity for Herriman Fire Safety that increased by the same value. So we just took the money from the Herriman City bucket and put it in the new tax bucket. So that's the difference in the line item. They're not going to notify you that you decreased that line item.
Okay.
it will not be in addition to your 1,000. That's the
Correct.
total.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, at this point, we will look for motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Sherry,
Second.
second by Teddy, all in favor.
Aye.
Any more discussion or further comments?
I'll just make another comment about the future stations, et cetera. I'll say, I'm a representative on the fire boards. That was one of the major reasons that we separated from the service area. For the big nice station over there, by the time we finish paying for it, basically we'll have paid for it almost 3 times over because we're part of the service area. They take all the tax money and they decide what buildings to build, right, throughout the entire area. So we essentially were helping other cities build their buildings. Meanwhile, ours on Main Street withers away. And we have all this new growth and we're gonna need more. So that was actually one of the major influences for our decision was we don't have enough control over where our residents' tax dollars are going to pay for these things. We have those growing needs. We want to keep that money here. So now that we have this service area, we'll be collecting that tax money. It stays in Herriman. We'll pay our contract fee for services with UFA. They'll man the stations and the equipment, et cetera. But we will own the buildings and choose where they're located and those sorts of things. So as Alan explained, with every new home that's built, that property tax comes in, that's the new money we'll receive during the building, right? That wasn't in the budget before that we can look to then pay for those things. Hopefully that helps a little bit. That's actually a major reason why we've made this change.
And I will echo a little bit what Mr. Robinson said. We're so grateful for our local, those that serve locally with UFA. Anthony's been great and is our liaison to UFA, and our local people have just been fantastic. So this really has no reflection on them at all. We got the best of the best out here. So tell them we appreciate them. So, okay, with that, I will look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve motion to approve resolution number R07-22, adopting a final budget, making appropriations for the support of the Herriman City Fire Safety Area for the period beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2024, and determining the rate of tax and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the Herriman City Fire Safety Area.
Motion by Sherry,
Second.
second by Teddy. Sherry?
Aye.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes, I'd like to make one comment after, if I may.
Yep, you bet. Go ahead. I'll vote yes, and that motion carries then. So go ahead, Steve.
Last year, when we were making the decision to include this in the city tax, there were some residents who challenged us on whether or not we would actually take the step to come back and make this change when there wasn't necessarily any legal requirement to do so. We could have decided to have kept both taxes. But this is us keeping our promise to our residents to not increase taxes, but simply to reallocate them in a more transparent way so that everybody can understand where their tax dollars are going as it relates to Herriman City. So I'm proud that we kept our promise. We did what we said what we're going to do. And I'm very confident that this is the right decision for our residents, not only in the way it's taxed, but how we are going to be handling those taxes going forward.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, any other comments from the council at this point? Not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the Herriman City Fire Safety Area meeting.
Motion by Teddy,
Second.
second by Jared, all in favor.
Bye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Are we doing the work meeting in here or there?